One of the cycles, either before or after trauma, is the withhold, withdraw, project cycle. Betrayal trauma survival aside, because let's face it, there will come a day when the terror and the survival is no longer the focus of our current situation. So have you asked yourself, why am I not happy about my relationship or relationships? Couples often think that their relationship problems are unique. Oftentimes when I meet with couples for coaching, they'll want to tell me their particular story and explain, the ins and outs of their conflict. And even though getting the detail out may be helpful to the person or the couple, the truth is that we often don't need specifics to understand exactly what's going on and how to solve it. Certainly all situations are unique, but there's topics, there's issues, there's, things like that. And a lot of times the issues come down to some basic things. So this is because of, regardless of what you're upset about, there's a certain predictable sequence couples tend to fall into. And it goes something along the lines of this. Number 1, withhold. Number 2, withdraw. Number 3, project. So when there's tension, blame, and criticism in your relationship, you'll often see a pattern at work. And it doesn't even have to involve fighting. In fact, couples who don't fight can be just as caught up in this destructive pattern. Let's look at how each part of the sequence works together to understand why. So number 1, withhold. Withholding happens anytime you sit on a truth. You could be hiding any number of things, big or small. It could be that you're not attracted to your partner anymore, and or you're attracted to someone else. And this actually happens, it can be very common after betrayal, because you have so much anger and resentment, and what they did is disgusting. And, eventually you kind of just lose that luster for them. I mean, you can, it's common. I've heard it quite a few times. You're bored in the relationship, that you've been spending secret money. You've been complaining about your partner to someone else. You're not sure if you guys should be together. You don't want any more children and they do, or they want more children and you don't, or vice versa. You really want to go somewhere else on vacation. You're angry about something your partner did or said. Again, betrayal aside, because obviously we're furious about them breaking trust. That you won't put up with any certain kind of behavior any longer. The moment you withhold a certain truth from your partner, you withdraw from your relationship. You kind of like check out, because concealing something important immediately creates a barrier between you and another. And here's how it looks. When we withdraw, and it doesn't have to be as dramatic as leaving or spending the night somewhere else or having them move out or what have you. In fact, it's usually much more subtle. And the scary thing with subtle things is oftentimes we don't recognize it. I mean, if we tell somebody, get the H out, go stay at a hotel because A, B, and C, or we decide to leave, that's pretty logical, frontal cortex. A lot of these things are subtle. And so withdrawing happens when you create a distance in the relationship. Stonewalling and sulking are common forms of withdrawing. An example would be one parent may be reading the newspaper, or one partner, doesn't matter, parent, partner, doesn't matter, reading the newspaper or a magazine rather than communicating, while the other one is in the kitchen, banging on pots and pans or doing something else. So, withdrawn partners get busy expressing their frustration in passive aggressive ways. Whenever you withhold attention or affection from your partner, you're withdrawing. You can also withdraw in more obvious ways by finding more and more things to do without your partner and by becoming intimate with somebody else. This could be an emotionally, spiritually, psychologically, obviously. And then number 3, projecting. Withholding and withdrawing won't make you happy. You'll live in a chronic state of dissatisfaction. This naturally leads to projecting blame onto your partner, because it's much easier to blame your partner than it is to take responsibility for whatever it is you're withholding. You've heard the saying before, it's better to get a red face once than a yellow face 1,000 times. And I say this all the time. We don't want to bring sensitive, argumentative topics to our spouse. It's much easier to ignore them. But what's happening is that you're putting that kink under a rug, and you're going to trip on that rug every time you walk by it. So it's best just to, knead it out like you're going to a massage therapist and kneading out that kink. It hurts like hell at times, but if you want to heal, you got to get comfortable with the uncomfortable. So basically, in essence, you're taking the ugly parts of yourself, assigning them to your partner like a film projector. You're treating your partner as a screen with which to play out whatever is actually happening within you. I'm trying to think if see, there I go digressing. No. I was going to tell you about the psychology. I think it's Jung that talks about projecting, but if, for instance, you have been spending too much time with someone that you're growing attracted to, you might start getting on your partner's case for not exercising and therefore not being as attractive to you. Or maybe you accuse your spouse of being a workaholic when you haven't gotten around to starting that business that you keep dreaming about. Withholding is where projection starts. The more you withhold, the bigger the projections come until you're seeing your partner as the worst person in the world. So really, not only just communication, but effective communication is key, because this is where a lot of the lies come in, and the living in a bubble and not communicating. There's a division of intimacy. There's a wedge involved. So yes, it's uncomfortable to have these difficult conversations at times, but the alternate to that is not being in a emotionally invested, completely vulnerable, intimate, close, thriving relationship. So I'd rather have no relationship at all, to be honest with you, rather than one that's going to feed me, compliment me, and thrive. It's said that every experienced counselor or coach will tell you that the number of complaints you have about your partner is directly proportional to the number of truth you're withholding. I don't want to paint a broad brush, but it's definitely something to think about. When you complain, you're essentially diverting attention from yourself and your own issues. You're focusing entirely on what your mate is or isn't doing. It's very convenient to focus on your mate, as it keeps you from looking at parts of yourself that you don't like. Let me emphasize and reiterate again, this is betrayal aside. If you're in the first stages of betrayal, this class probably doesn't pertain to a whole lot, because understandably, you're furious, rightfully so. You're angry, you're profoundly sad, you're confused, and you had no responsibility in that at all. Zero. I don't care if you weigh 2,000 pounds, you have one tooth, and you were never sexual with your spouse. They had zero business going outside their marriage whatsoever. I'm talking about as you're coming back together, reconciling, or if you're planning on getting into another relationship in the future. These are some tools and techniques to keep in mind for a successful, thriving relationship. And your partner is doing exactly the same thing. So it's a battle of projection rather than dealing with what's real. This is the reason this is serious is because it's subtle. A lot of times we don't even realize we're doing this. We criticize others for, it's almost like this. For those of us that have kids, when your kids are crying, a good portion of us wants to stop their crying, not to necessarily make them feel better. We want them to stop crying to make us feel better, because when our kids are crying, we feel helpless, and we feel, like, geez, am I being a good, knowledgeable, wise parent? Do I know what to do to solve their problem? And if we're all caught up in emotions, or we can't solve their problem, it doesn't matter. I digress. Bottom line, when our kids are crying, 9 times out of 10, we want to feel better about ourselves. That's why we want them to stop crying, not necessarily. Now, we'll think it's because of, we want them to feel better and we want them to start crying, and that's what we tell ourselves or whatever, but it's almost on a subconscious level. I'm going to stop there before I go on forever. As long as each partner stays locked into blaming one another, this destructive sequence will continue. In coaching, I sometimes ask both partners to do something counterintuitive. I may ask them to take their focus off of one another and come back to themselves. So ask yourself, what truths do I have that need to be revealed, even within me? Or better yet, what am I pretending not to know? And this is actually a good exercise for getting in touch with your intuition after betrayal. or during another class. You may be shocked to realize that there's a lot that you're not admitting to yourself, which is why you can't bring yourself to reveal it to your partner. Before you can heal your relationship and stop the pattern of blame from repeating in your life, you first have to lovingly point the finger back at yourself. This doesn't mean that you're to blame for everything, certainly not. Quite the contrary. When you take the time to examine what part you're playing in the conflict, you're then better to be able to discriminate and separate your stuff from your partners. Obviously, we all come to the table with baggage. Oh, Lord have mercy. I came to the table with an ocean of garbage and baggage. So, not everyone is to, blame individually, whatever. But it is good to accept what garbage did I bring into the relationship? What responsibility do I have in any type of wedge or division or lack of intimacy? And when I say intimacy, I don't mean sex. It can be included, but it's just, that emotional vulnerability. Authenticity creates intimacy. To break the vapor lock of withhold, withdraw, project, you have to be willing to be real. Not only will authenticity break the pattern of blame, but it will create intimacy. A single moment of authenticity will open up the range to learn with your partner rather than getting into control battles. Authenticity creates vitality in you and your relationship. And I'll tell you something, people that have pre-existing trauma have a very hard time with intimacy, have a very hard time with being emotionally vulnerable, having a very hard time with being open and honest. And a lot of it's for a self-preservation. It's a self-protecting thing, not an excuse. I don't care what side of the fence you're on, in this situation, but just to give you a little bit of more understanding. People with trauma backgrounds. I had a tremendously traumatic background. My entire childhood, I marinated in toxicity and dysfunction and abuse. So there was no way to be vulnerable when I was younger. So I went into adulthood with walls, so it's very, now as an adult, you have to take responsibility and say, hey, I had no voice when I was young. I have all the voice now. I had no choice in my beginning. I have all the say in how I'm going to end. So this isn't an excuse, a justification, whatever, if you had a traumatic background or the person who betrayed you had a traumatic background. But just to give you a little bit more understanding, because knowledge is power. Okay. Often people that have been withholding for so long, they may not know what's really going on inside themselves, but it's crucial to get real and raw and truthful, because whenever we are withholding a truth from ourselves or from our partner, we're also withholding love. Learning to love yourself forces you to get honest by asking, what is in me needing to be loved right now? Blame, however, looks like this. If only you would change, or you would be different, or you would do this, or you would say this, or you would act this way, or you would blah, 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 then I wouldn't be so upset. Remember, if you rely on happiness to come from someone else, it will never come. And if it does, it's temporary and it's really not authentic or real. So it must start with you. So giving love to yourself opens up a connection to yourself that is real and present. And that in turn opens you up to seeing your partner as they are and not as a projection of your internal voids or insecurities. Even one moment of loving yourself takes the focus off your partner and brings it back to the only person you truly have control over, and that is you. Ironically, once you bring the focus back to yourself this way, and you start generating love from within, you're able to love your partner more and receive more love from him or her. And after all, isn't more love and connection really what we want?